9 years ago, my own brother shattered my jaw and banished me from his life, all because his wife called me trash. And then, just yesterday, they showed up at my Oceanfront mansion, suitcases in hand, announcing they were moving in. Can you believe the audacity? My name is Kyle, and what I just told you, that wasn't the half of it. 9 years ago, the silence that followed my brother's fist spoke louder than any shout. He had looked me dead in the eye, blood still blooming in my mouth, and spat out those words, "Trash like you doesn't belong in my life." Then he just turned away, walked off with Venus, the woman who'd poisoned every last drop of connection between us. After that, nothing. No calls, no birthday wishes, no holiday greetings. Just a deafening, soul-crushing silence that became my entire world. But life has a funny way of twisting things. Because I clawed my way up from nothing, became a CEO, bought a beachside mansion, and guess who showed up on my doorstep, bright and early yesterday morning, all smiles and luggage? Yeah, them. They thought I'd forgotten. They thought I'd crumbled. But what I did next, they never, ever saw coming. Let me take you back to where it all began. The air that warm Sunday evening in Charleston, South Carolina, reeked of charred ribs, cheap beer, and a suffocating layer of fake family cheer. Caleb's backyard was a blur of drunken uncles, giggling cousins, and someone, bless their heart, absolutely incinerating the barbecue. And me? I stood on the fringes, plastic cup in hand, nodding, smiling, pretending. Pretending I wasn't invisible. Pretending I wasn't just tolerated. Every year, I'd show up, a glutton for punishment, holding on to this desperate, foolish hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. That they'd finally see me as more than just an afterthought. Then Venus, my sister-in-law, glided over. Her smile was a masterpiece of artificial sweetness, a southern belle turned queen bee, holding court. You know the type. Every flick of her wrist, every toss of her perfect hair, screamed, "I own this family." And the sickening truth was, she kinda did. "Kale, sweetie," she purred, her voice a little too loud, a little too saccharine. Her manicured hand landed on my shoulder like it was bestowing a blessing. "Still between jobs, huh? Must be nice, all that free time." Her words, light as they seemed, hit me like a physical blow. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the nearby crowd, enough to make the sting bloom. Caleb, my own brother, didn't even flinch. He just took another long swig from his beer, his gaze fixed on the lawn like it owed him something. Nothing. Not a single word of defense. I straightened, forcing my voice steady. "I'm actually freelancing now. It's flexible, and it pays well." Venus tilted her head, a smirk playing on her lips. "Flexible is a nice way of saying living off other people's hard work, don't you think?" Something inside me snapped. Just a whisper of a crack, but I felt it. Still, I held my tongue. "Not yet." Then Caleb finally spoke, his voice thick with a strange accusation. "She's got a point, Cale. You're always around when it's free food and good company, but the rest of the year, you ghost us." Ghost? My blood ran cold. I was the one who called. The one who spent weekends helping Dad fix that rickety deck. The one who secretly bailed Caleb and Venus out when their mortgage was underwater. I swallowed hard, a lump forming in my throat. "I never asked for anything," I managed. "Oh, come on," Venus chirped, cutting me off. "That's such a martyr thing to say. Just own it. You drift. You show up empty-handed. You're 37 and still figuring it out. The family. Like I wasn't a part of it. Like I was some foreign object they tolerated." I looked around, desperate. Not a single person spoke up. Not Aunt May, who I'd driven 2 hours to pick up from the hospital after a surgery. Not Uncle Brent, whose broken lawnmower I'd spent an entire Saturday fixing. They just stared into their drinks, faces blank, complicit. And then I saw her. My mom. Sitting quietly on the porch, holding something small in her hand. She caught my eye, then quickly looked away, her expression unreadable. Not wanting to be part of this, but refusing to step in. My chest tightened, a suffocating band of pain. I turned back towards Venus, a burning retort on my tongue, but Caleb stepped between us. His eyes were glassy, his voice too loud, too aggressive. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" he spat, his face inches from mine. "Always acting like some sad poet. But you're nothing, Cale. You've always been nothing. The silence that followed was suffocating, thick with unspoken accusations. Is this really what you think of me? I whispered, my voice cracking despite my efforts to control it. Caleb stepped closer, his breath hot on my face. Trash like you doesn't belong in my life. And then he swung. Hard. Fast. His fist connected with my jaw with a sickening crunch. My cup flew, an arc of spilled beer. My knees buckled. I hit the ground, the world spinning. No one moved. For a second, all I could hear was the frantic buzz of cicadas and my own heart, hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Blood flooded my mouth, hot and coppery. Dazed, I pushed myself up slowly. My gaze found Mom again. Still on the porch, still silent, still motionless. But in her hand, I saw the object I'd noticed earlier. Dad's old pocket watch, its glass cracked, the minute hand forever frozen between two numbers. She stood, walked towards me, and without a single word, placed it in my bleeding palm. Then she turned her back and walked away. It wasn't a gesture of love. It felt like a definitive, chilling closure. I didn't cry. I didn't fight back. I just stood up, shaky, bleeding, and I walked. Not just out of that backyard, not just out of that house, but out of their lives. Out of the family. 9 long years passed before I ever saw any of them again. And even then, they only came because I had something they desperately wanted. I got into my car, the taste of blood in my mouth, the echo of their silence, a deafening roar behind me. No one ran after me. That night, I slept in my truck outside a 24-hour CVS under a flickering, buzzing light that felt like a bad memory come to life. I stared through the windshield until morning, the cold ache in my chest settling in, feeling permanent. 3 weeks later, with 2 duffel bags, I left Charleston for good. Houston wasn't a grand plan. It was just the first place I found cheap rent and a Craigslist ad for warehouse help. I took it, slept on a mattress on the floor in a studio, so tiny I had to move the trash can just to open the fridge. Nobody knew me there. And that, I realized, was the whole damn point. For the first 2 years, I didn't breathe a word about my family. Not to coworkers, not to the neighbor who always asked if I was okay. I just kept my head down, took every extra shift they'd give me, and try not to think about birthdays, Thanksgivings, or Christmas lights. But you can only bury things so deep. In my 3rd year, I ended up in the ER on my 34th birthday. Passed out from dehydration, heat stroke, after loading trucks all afternoon in the brutal sun. When I came to, the nurse asked if anyone was coming to pick me up. I just said no. Told her I'd call someone, but I didn't. I walked home from that hospital with a prescription in one pocket and a referral for therapy in the other. Never filled either. I wasn't angry yet, just hollow. That came later. By year 5, the silence wasn't just painful. It had started to feel personal. Caleb never reached out. Not after I moved, not even after I posted once on Facebook about being in the hospital. Just one sad like from someone I didn't even know. That's when I finally wrote the letter. I didn't write to argue. I didn't rehash that night. I just said I missed him. Said I hope we could talk. Maybe not right away. Maybe not face to face. Just something. I mailed it to his old address in Charleston. No return address, just his name. It took 3 agonizing weeks to get a response. But it wasn't Caleb's handwriting on the envelope. It was Venus's. Inside was a typed letter, cold, precise, clinical. It started with, Cale, your inability to take accountability for the pain you've caused this family is exhausting. She talked about my pattern of victimhood, how I drained people emotionally, how Caleb had moved on with his life. There was a line I remember word for word. You were never cut off. You just couldn't handle the consequences of your own selfishness. I read it twice, then a 3rd time. At the bottom, no signature from Caleb. Just hers. She'd intercepted it. He never even saw my letter. That was the moment I realized I could scream into the void forever. No one was coming to pull me out. I stared at that letter for hours, at the way she framed everything, like I was some parasite they'd finally removed. I tried to tell myself maybe she was protecting him, that maybe he really didn't care enough to ask. But deep down, I knew the truth. That night, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, 5th floor, facing a grocery store parking lot, and ripped the letter into 100 tiny pieces. Let them scatter in the wind. like they were never written. Then I went back inside, opened my laptop, and started looking for night classes. Accounting, business. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew one thing. I was done being the guy who waited for permission to heal. They wanted silence. They'd get it, but not the way they thought. Because silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means permission. Permission to build something without them. Permission to grow without their blessing. Permission to take every ounce of that pain and turn it into fuel. So I stopped asking questions, stopped waiting, and I decided if I was going to be alone, I'd at least be powerful. I didn't announce it. I didn't post a cryptic quote on social media or buy a journal with hustle on the cover. I just got to work. The day after I tore up Venus's letter, I opened an old laptop someone gave me for $20. It wheezed louder than the AC in my apartment, but it turned on. That was enough. I started watching YouTube videos about coding. JavaScript, Python, whatever looked complicated enough to scare most people off. Then I started over from the beginning. Again and again. I failed every exercise at first. Couldn't make a button do what it was supposed to. Didn't understand how loops worked. But the frustration? It felt better than the silence. I'd load trucks at the shipping yard until 3 a.m., then grab a few hours of sleep, wake up, and go right back to the screen. I had no girlfriend, no weekend plans, no distractions. Just this voice in the back of my head. Hers, saying, "You'll never build anything on your own." That voice followed me like a shadow. Every time I wanted to quit, I heard it. When I finally got my first Hello World program run, I whispered, "Take that, Venus." 2 years in, I'd built something decent. A simple app for scheduling inventory runs, meant for small warehouses like the one I worked at. I showed it to my boss. He blinked at the screen, scratched his beard, then said, "Did you build this yourself?" That word, yourself. I nodded. A week later, his brother-in-law, some guy in IT, sent it to a firm in town that did logistics software. They asked to meet. I showed up in a thrift store blazer, nervous, sweating through my undershirt. The guy interviewing me looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. He scrolled through my demo silently, then looked at me and said, "You're rough, but you're real. We can work with that." That was the first time in my adult life someone outside a grocery store cashier called me valuable. They hired me. Junior level. Base pay. But I didn't care. I remember sitting in that cheap car in their parking lot, gripping the steering wheel with both hands, whispering, "You did it, man. You did it." 6 months in, they bumped me to full-time. I stopped loading trucks. I bought a real desk. I paid off my last payday loan. I still didn't call my brother. Success doesn't fill the hole. It just changes its shape. The following spring, my company sent me to a tech conference in Austin. I almost didn't go. I didn't own a single button down that didn't have a stain, but my manager said, "It's good exposure. Shake some hands. Eat the free food." So I went. Walking the floor was like stepping into a different planet. Polished booths. People with fancy titles. Young CEOs handing out business cards like candy. And then, out of nowhere, someone called my name. "Kyle." I turned around, half expecting it to be a mistake. It wasn't. It was Dante Marshall. We'd gone to high school together. He used to sit behind me in computer lab, always asking me to fix his login. I hadn't seen him in almost 15 years. "Dante," I said, blinking. "Man, look at you." He grinned. "Look at you. Didn't think I'd see you in a place like this." We ended up grabbing coffee at the corner of the venue, away from the noise. Turns out, Dante had gone into venture capital. He'd co-founded a few startups and was scouting talent for a new AI-focused project. We talked for an hour. I told him a little about my app, about the firm. Not everything, just enough. Then he leaned in and said, "You know, back in high school, I always thought you were too smart to be stuck in that town." I smiled, but I didn't say anything. Then he said, "We're building something. It's early stage. We need someone who understands code, but also understands pain. Real life stuff, not just algorithms." You have. That made me sit up. "Look," he said, "I got guys with MBAs lining up for this, but they've never been punched in the face by their own family. Never slept in their car. You have? That means you'll think differently." That hit me harder than any job offer ever could. Still, I hesitated. I told him I'd think about it. That night, back at the hotel, I sat in the dark and thought about everything I'd been through. About Charleston. About Caleb. About the punch. About Venus and her cold letter. You'll never build anything on your own. I opened my laptop and stared at a blank screen. And then I started typing out a plan. I was on a call, pitching our new feature to a group of investors from Singapore while my assistant knocked lightly and slid her phone in front of me. Just a name on the screen. Chloe Jacobs. Podcast. Confirmed for 2 p.m. I gave a nod and kept going, but somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard that click. That small moment when life shifts and you don't realize it until later. The interview was supposed to be light, a casual chat about how a former warehouse guy built an AI logistics tool in a one-bedroom apartment. But somewhere between the fourth and fifth question, she asked, "Do you ever wish your family had been more involved in your rise?" I paused, thought about skipping it, but my throat tightened and what came out wasn't planned. Sometimes, I said, family isn't who raised you, it's who respected you. She blinked, jotted something in her notebook, and moved on. The next morning, my inbox exploded. I'd forgotten how fast the internet moves when it smells something raw. That quote got clipped, shared, posted on Reels, quoted on TikTok, turned into merch. Someone even messaged me a screenshot of a mug that said, "Respect is thicker than blood." Kale, Tyrell. It felt surreal. I was living a high-rise now, waking up to a view of the San Diego coastline. Marble countertops, smart lights, everything I once thought only existed on TV. And still, most nights I cooked the same way. Eggs and toast, eaten standing up at the stove like I used to when the power got cut. Money hadn't changed me. But silence? Silence had made me sharper. I didn't party. I didn't flaunt anything. My satisfaction came quietly. Watching numbers grow. Hearing feedback from clients. Seeing employees believe in the thing I built. And then it happened. A Tuesday night late. I just finished reviewing updates from the product team, poured myself a glass of water. My phone buzzed once. Unknown number. I was going to ignore it until I saw the message. "Your brother's not doing so well lately." No greeting, no name, no context. Just that. I stared at it, my thumb hovering. 9 years. Not a call, not a card, not even a "how are you?" And now, I scrolled up. Nothing else in the thread. I checked the number. Out-of-state area code. Not saved. But I knew that typing. That clipped, formal phrasing. That cold warmth. It was my mother. I sat down. My heart wasn't racing, just sinking like a stone dropping in deep water. I didn't reply. Instead, I put the phone face down on the table, stepped out onto the balcony, and let the breeze slap my face a little. The city lights flickered below. Somewhere far off, someone was probably laughing, dancing, living without this weight. I couldn't tell if the message was concern, guilt, or bait. And that's what gnawed at me. What did they want? Was Caleb dying? Depressed? Broke? Or did they just see my name trending and decide now was the time to pull me back in? Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to scream. But mostly, I just stood there, letting the silence stretch until it felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. Because when silence finally breaks, it doesn't whisper. It echoes. For a long time, I'd trained myself to forget the little boy in me who used to look up to Caleb, who used to hang on every word. The boy who just wanted them to be proud. But in that moment, I realized something I didn't want to admit. I still wanted it. I still wanted to know they saw me. Not just on a screen, not just when I was useful, but as a son, as a brother. I sat on the edge of the balcony, elbows on my knees, staring at the ocean, and asked myself out loud, in a voice I barely recognized, am I still the kid who just wanted them to love me? And after I hit send on just 10 words, no punctuation, no warmth, I slid the phone into the drawer and went about my day like nothing had shifted. But something had. That night, I barely slept. Not from regret, just friction. Something unsettled, like a window left cracked open during a storm. I told myself it was done. One reply, that's all. No door opened, no forgiveness extended. Then, 3 days later, a knock. I was in the kitchen, making coffee. Early afternoon. Sun cutting sharp lines across the tile. I wasn't expecting anyone. Most people had to get past the doorman, the elevator code, the front desk. Whoever it was had help getting up here. I opened the door, and there they were. Caleb and Venus, standing like they belonged. He grinned, like we'd just seen each other last weekend. "Little bro," he said, arms open like a joke. You gonna leave me hanging? I didn't move. Venus stepped in front of him, bright-eyed, polished. Same lipstick shade I remembered for 9 years ago. Kale, wow, you've really made something of yourself. This place is stunning. I stayed quiet, let the silence stretch between us like barbed wire. They waited for an invite in. I didn't give one. Caleb, always the performer, just chuckled and walked past me like he owned the place. Venus followed, heels tapping lightly against the floor. I shut the door slower than I should have. He made a lap around the open living room. Eyes everywhere. Windows. Furniture. The art I barely noticed anymore. This view, he said, shaking his head. Man, who would have thought? I didn't answer. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. What are you doing here? Venus took the lead, per usual. We were in the area, needed a little change of scenery. Figured it was time we stopped by. It's been far too long. Has it? I asked. Caleb turned. Come on, man. Don't be like that. Family's family. I almost laughed. Almost. He sat down on the couch like this was his place. Like he'd never laid hands on me. Like he hadn't watched me bleed on the sidewalk and walked away. I could feel it building in my chest. That slow climb. Not rage. Not yet. Just pressure. Venus perched on the armrest. All grace and calculation. Things have been a little tight on our end lately, she said, drawing out the words. Nothing dramatic, just, you know how the economy's been. I didn't respond, just watch her lips move. Her earrings sway. She smiled. Anyway, we were thinking, you've got this big space, way more than one person needs. We just need somewhere to crash for a few weeks. Nothing permanent, just a soft place to land. A pause. Calculated for family. That word again. I stared at her, then at him. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on knees. Look, I know we've had history, but we're blood. That's got to count for something. And just like that, I saw it clear as glass. They didn't come to apologize. They didn't come to reconnect. They came because they needed something. That's all I ever was to them. A backup plan. Behind them, on the hallway shelf, sat a photo I never took down. The old family barbecue. Me, Caleb, and Dad before the stroke. Caleb had tossed it once. Called it garbage. I found it cracked in a box and kept it anyway. I never fixed the frame. Left it broken on purpose. Now I walked over and picked it up. They watched me. You remember this? I asked. Caleb smiled. Yeah, good times. I nodded. You threw it out. Said it was trash. He shifted. Did I? I don't remember that. Of course, he didn't. Venus cleared her throat. We're not trying to stir anything up. We're just trying to move forward together. I placed the photo back, face down this time, then turned around. I need time to think about it, I said. Venus stood. Of course, totally understand. Just a few weeks, Kyle. No pressure. Caleb walked toward the door, giving me a light pat on the shoulder. It's good to see you, man. Really. I didn't flinch, didn't nod, didn't say goodbye. I just closed the door behind them, locked it, stood there, back pressed to the wood. The apartment felt colder, quieter, but not empty. They'd come all this way to pretend the past never happened. To ask for a piece of the present they never helped build. No apology, no accountability, just expectation. I looked out the window, down to the street below, where their Uber waited, and I already knew my answer. By the way, if you're still with me, still listening to this unbelievable ride, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel, and trust me, there are plenty more stories like this where that came from. I stood there a long time, staring at it. That's when it hit me. They weren't family. They were squatters. And if they wouldn't leave on their own, I'd show them out on my terms. The next day, I didn't waste a second. I pulled up the deed to my house, just to remind myself every single inch of this place was mine. Then I printed 2 crisp copies of a guest agreement. Sat at the kitchen island. And I waited. They strolled in around noon, Caleb yawning, Venus glued to her phone. Morning, she chirped, like we were roommates, like the past was just some bad dream. I slid the documents across the counter. Didn't say a word. Caleb's eyebrow shot up. He picked one up, a nervous, forced chuckle escaping him. What's this? He asked, but there was a flicker in his eyes. He knew. I kept my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Your guest agreement. It outlines what that means. Venus finally looked up, her practiced smile faltering. Caleb skimmed the first page. Bro, come on. Seriously? Legal paperwork. He tried to laugh it off, but it was hollow. I just met his eyes, unblinking. I waited. He flipped to the second page. You got a lawyer to write this? I did. Venus walked around the island, snatching up the second copy. Her silence stretched a beat too long. She read, her voice laced with growing disbelief. No alteration to property. No guests without permission. Shared spaces remain under homeowner discretion. Maximum stay 30 days. She slammed the paper down. Wow, she muttered, her smile gone. You really think this makes you what? Better than us? No, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. It makes me clear. Caleb shook his head, scoffing. This is cold, man. I looked at him, letting the silence hang heavy. This isn't about cold, I corrected him. It's about respect. Venus leaned in, arms crossed, her eyes narrowed. Her voice was sharper now, a razor's edge. You know, you walk around here like some self-made king, but you don't even remember who kept you fed when you were 15, who paid your bus fare when you were broke. I remember everything, I said, my voice low, which is why this isn't a favor. It's a line. Caleb tried to step in to defuse the bomb. We're family. Families don't do this kind of thing. Families don't move into your house without asking. I countered. He had no comeback. But Venus? She cracked. The carefully constructed facade shattered. You think you're above us now? She hissed, her voice rising. You don't even know what he's done for this family. Caleb whipped his head around, eyes wide. Venus don't, but she was already gone, past the point of no return. No, she barked, venom dripping from every word. He wants truth. Let's give it to him. Her voice broke then, sharp as shattered glass on tile. He lost our house, Cale. All of it. Blackjack. Sports bets. Loans. I begged him to stop, but it didn't matter. He kept chasing it, like the next hand was going to fix everything. She pointed a trembling finger toward the ceiling. That's why we're here. Not because we missed you. Because we had nowhere else to go. Caleb stood frozen, like someone had punched the air right out of him. He didn't deny a single word. I sat back in my chair, feeling something shift inside me. Not sympathy, not even anger, not really. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the little brother, constantly cleaning up someone else's mess. I felt solid, grounded. Venus wiped her eyes, though she wasn't really crying. Just cornered. You want us to sign your precious little paper? She snapped, snatching a pen from the counter. She scrawled her name across the bottom, a furious slash, then shoved it toward Caleb. He hesitated a long, agonizing moment. But he signed, not because he wanted to, because he didn't have a choice. As they stalked out of the kitchen, I stood up and walked to the bookshelf, moved a stack of tech magazines aside. The photo was still there, still cracked, still mine. I didn't fix it. I just made space beside it, set the signed documents down right next to it, let them sit together. A broken past and a boundary, finally, irrevocably drawn. They signed it, but the look in their eyes, that said something else entirely. This isn't over, and I believe them. 3 days bled into a tense, quiet stalemate. They kept their distance, mostly, stayed polite enough, but every move felt carefully staged. Venus started wearing more makeup around the house, as if to impress the walls themselves. Caleb whistled a little too loudly when he walked past my office, trying to project an air of effortless relaxation. They even cooked one night a big, elaborate dinner, telling me they were trying to make things right. I didn't touch the food. Later that night, a storm rolled in off the coast. Thunder grumbled. The wind howled through the window panes, rattling the glass just enough to make it feel like the whole house might just come apart. At 2:40 a.m., my phone buzzed, vibrating me awake. At first, I thought it was an emergency alert, a weather warning. But it wasn't. It was worse. Dozens of notifications, missed calls, texts, emails. The messages started flooding in faster than I could open them. What's going on, man? Is this real? That video of you yelling at a woman, it's trending. Cale, are you okay? I blinked at the screen, the words swirling, not making sense. Then I saw the video. It was choppy, bad lighting, obviously recorded from security footage. My own security footage. They had used my own cameras against me. In the clip, I was standing in the kitchen, arms raised. Not in anger, but mid-explanation, talking firmly, yes, but certainly not yelling. But in the edited version, it sounded like I was screaming. They'd spliced in an audio track of a woman crying. Not real crying, no. Just a looped, fake sob, expertly designed to set a specific tone. They'd even blurred her face, like it was some crime documentary on TV. The caption screamed, "Billionaire tech founder caught on camera in domestic dispute." By 3:15 a.m., the video had already racked up 2 million views. My body went cold. I sat there for a long time, phone in hand, my mind a blank, terrified slate. Not rage, not panic, just the slow, dawning, chilling realization. This was it. Their play. They couldn't get in through the front door, so they were trying to burn the whole damn house down. But what they didn't know, what they never took the time to consider, was that I'd learned a few things after that break into my office last year. Paranoia can be an ugly trait, sure, but can also be incredibly smart. I got up, crossing the house in the dark. The storm outside drowned out the sound of my steps. Caleb and Venus were still asleep. I didn't even glance into their room. Instead, I went into my study, opened a drawer. Inside, a small, unmarked black hard drive. I plugged it into my desktop. The footage was all there. Clean, uncut, raw. Every room, every word spoken. The original audio. No screaming, no crying. Just a tired man, setting firm boundaries in his own home. And then I found it. A clip from 1 week prior in the guest room. Venus pacing. Caleb slouched in the corner. Her voice, sharp as a dagger. "If we cut it right, no one will care. It's fake. We just need him to look angry. That's all." Caleb, timid, asked, "He'll sue us." Venus's chilling response, "He's too soft. He won't hit back." I saved that clip, added timestamps, labeled every single file. Then I call my attorney. By 5 a.m., the originals had been forwarded to my legal team's media contacts and my publicist. By 6:30 a.m., the headline started to shift. False abuse claim backfires. Billionaire provides security footage. Extortion attempt caught on tape. The comments rolled in, a torrent of vindication. They tried to ruin him. He played it smart. Always document. Always protect yourself. Respect to the quiet ones who don't flinch. By 9 a.m., Caleb and Venus still hadn't emerged from their room. I didn't knock. I sat in the living room instead, coffee in hand, watching the surf hammer the shoreline, a powerful, cleansing rhythm. My phone buzzed again. It was a text, an unfamiliar number, but I knew exactly who it was from. Just one line. "We didn't mean for it to go this far." I didn't answer. There's a difference between making a mistake and deliberately drawing blood. And when someone tries to take everything from you, your work, your reputation, your dignity, there's no going back to polite breakfast table apologies. I stood up, walked to the hallway, past the photo frame again. Still cracked. Still there. Deliberately left, like a scar that doesn't need covering, only acknowledgement. I left it untouched. Their silence was louder than any apology could ever be. After the dust settled, it wasn't noise that filled the house. It was something far heavier. Quiet, but not the kind that aches. Not the silence of waiting for something to change. This was different. This was over. Caleb and Venus didn't say goodbye. No note. No phone call. Just gone. I woke up one morning, made coffee like usual, and noticed their door was open. The bed was stripped. A few drawers left halfway out. The air fryer was still there, a cruel, mundane reminder. But everything else? Vanished. They even left behind a half-used bottle of Venus's cloyingly sweet perfume on the counter, its artificial scent lingering a little too long. By noon, the gossip blogs had already moved on to the next scandal. Their social accounts went silent. Caleb's profile vanished completely. Venus, ever the dramatic, posted something 2 days later, a photo of a stormy sky, captioned with, "Family is messy, but love remains." I didn't react, didn't repost, didn't text. There was nothing left to salvage. I went for a long walk that afternoon, down the hill, past the mailboxes, just to feel the salt-kissed breeze. When I got back, the house looked different. Not because anything had physically changed, but because something in me had. I walked the hallway slowly, fingertips brushing the wall. The house was still too big for one man, but it didn't feel empty anymore. Just peaceful. In the foyer, that same cracked photo frame still hung where it always had. I paused in front of it. The glass was still split, a diagonal scar right across my younger self's face. The crack caught the light just enough to shine. I could have fixed it months ago, but I didn't, and I still wouldn't. It stays. That night, I opened an envelope that had been sitting on my desk for weeks, avoided, pushed aside. It was confirmation that a grant I'd submitted in Mom's name had been approved. $100,000 to a local literacy program for single mothers trying to earn their GEDs. She would have liked that. She used to say, "Don't just grow money, grow something that grows people." I sat with that for a while, read the letter twice, folded it back neatly, and placed it next to the photo. Later that week, I hosted dinner. Just a small thing. Nothing fancy. 6 people around my dining table, passing roasted vegetables, pouring wine, laughing too loud. There was Mark, the intern I once mentored, who now runs his own nonprofit. He told a story mid-meal, something I'd long forgotten. "You remember that time I was going to quit? Right after my dad passed," he said, setting his fork down. "I walked into your office thinking I was going to be fired. Instead, you gave me 2 weeks paid and told me to go get right with myself." I looked at him. He smiled. "That saved me, man." Seriously. The table went quiet for a second. Then someone changed the subject, talking about politics or some movie remake, but I wasn't in the room anymore. I was somewhere deeper, because in that moment, it hit me. This was the family I chose. Not tied by blood, but by presence, by loyalty, by showing up. It was enough. After dinner, people lingered, refilled glasses, argued over old music, swapped chairs. When they finally trickled out around midnight, I walked them to the door one by one. I cleaned up slowly. No rush. Then I poured myself one last glass of wine, turned off the kitchen lights, and stood at the front window. Outside, the ocean was restless but not angry. The tide crashed in a soft, steady rhythm, almost like breathing. I stood there a while. The house behind me didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like a place I had earned. Brick by brick, scar by scar. I sipped the wine and whispered, not to anyone, just to the air in front of me. They thought they could break me, but they only helped me build walls they'll never cross again. I glanced once more toward the hallway where the photo hung crooked, glass cracked, memory unedited. Then I turned away from it and walked back into the quiet. Some endings don't need noise. Just the sound of a door finally closing and staying closed. So, I've told you my story. What do you think? Have you ever had to draw a line with family? What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts.